The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
All right, welcome back to Old Space Show. I am Brandon, and this is my companion, Tony.
Heyo.
This series of Old Space Show follows the episode-by-episode time-traveling, body-hopping exploits of the first season of Quantum Leap. Today we will be talking about the second, or for some people, third episode, Star-Crossed. Sam leaps into Dr. Gerald Bryant on June 15th, 1972, an English teacher who is having a fling with a student named Jamie. Sam also meets the woman who stood him up at the altar in his own life, Donna Elise, but she has not yet met him in the future. It seems clear that Sam is there to help Jamie and Gerald not wind up married, but Sam is determined to help Donna reconnect with her estranged father. Despite threats to his job, Al gives Sam the information he needs to reunite his star-crossed lover with her father in Washington at the Watergate Hotel, potentially giving himself a second shot at marriage. As a group of four, he convinces Oscar, Jamie's wrestler boyfriend, to use his car to take him, Donna, and Jamie out to find Donna's father. Sam achieves connecting Donna with her dad and also inadvertently tips security off to the Watergate scandal, an event in history he doesn't remember. He only leaps, though, when Jamie and Oscar's romance returns. When the leap finishes, Sam finds himself in a boxing ring during a big match. This is directed by Mark Sobel. He is a big genre TV director. He's done Sliders, Seventh Heaven, Outer Limits, Lois and Clark, Friday the 13th, a series, the 1980s Alfred Hitchcock Presents, the 90s Dark Shadows series, and The Equalizer. And written by Deborah Pratt, who's a producer on the series and would later narrate it and play the part of Ziggy. And she writes 20 episodes of this show and also wrote for Airwolf and Magnum P.I. It stars Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell and guest stars Terry Hatcher, Leslie S. Sachs, and Michael Gregory.
What an interesting second/third episode, to kind of, really kind of dives off the deep end and it says, okay, we're going to take this premise that we just set up last episode and take it to the extreme here, right? Like we're going to go back in history. It's going to be about people, Sam's got a mystery to solve, but at the very end, we're going to throw in some historical stuff as well, just for good measure in this last 5 minutes, because why the heck not?
Right. Yes. and I do like, there's kind of a reversal. So like we were 100% Sam last episode, and now they give us kind of where we're sitting back going, I don't think you should be doing that. And then giving us more trust into Al, who is, trying to advise him and giving you a different look at Sam, trying to take things in a more personal route. So we immediately are seeing he shouldn't be doing this for personal gain.
Right.
He can, but yeah.
Right. Well, this is where they throw the number one rule of Quantum Leap time travel. The time traveler shall not take advantage of his position to improve or alter his life.
Right.
And then Bakula essentially crumples that up and throws it right out the space window. And and it just says, forget it. I'm going to do what I want. I called my dad last time. Right. I'm going to mess with my almost wife this time. I'll do what I want. Damn it. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's an interesting spot to go right away to this. Like, oh wow, he's got a personal connection to this one. Last time it was just, oh, my dad's probably alive during this time. Now he's like, oh, look, it's my old fiance before I met her.
Right.
At the college.
Yeah, it's very interesting how they kind of thread things there. Where you think, just like you said, you think it's going to be about the thing that he needs to, the wrong made right to correct history and things. And it always seems to come back to, at least early on, his personal life. I mean, this one takes place, most of the action takes place in Marion, Ohio. Sam's from Elkridge, Indiana, another, fictitious small town Indiana.
There is an Elkhart,
TV
Indiana, but he's from Elkridge. Yes.
Yes. Elkridge must just be down the road from Pawnee, I'm assuming.
Right.
So.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a very interesting. It's a very interesting dichotomy of yeah, we're gonna do this futuristic space thing where he has to fix some cosmic imbalance, but also he's going to take care of his personal business because why not, right?
Mm-hmm. And we get the guest star. I mean, Terry Hatcher. So the way people used to rise to stardom back in the day was getting thrown into guest star on like every show you could possibly get in, and this was during her time where she was on MacGyver, she was on lots of shows. She was in Tango and Cash, and then she would get Lois and Clark, which was also connected with people on this show, and boom, now she's somebody. Which personal favorite Lois Lane is Terry Hatcher. I was a Lois and Clark fan, and she just was a great Lois for me. But this was like during her rise and up, so it's like, oh, I think she was somebody at this time, but it was it wasn't like a huge guess. It was just like, oh, I've seen her on a lot of things.
Right. Yeah. It's difficult to remember that after the fact sometimes when you see people and you're like, oh, I can't believe they would do this, whatever. At this point in her career trajectory, that she was still very much, moving towards that upswing, but hadn't really hit it big yet. So this was, this was par for the course for her back in the day, in hoping that one of these would be her break. And certainly, you look back on it now and you see why. I mean, she's a great actress, and she obviously had a great chemistry with Scott Bakula and everything here. So I mean, it was nice to see her in this role for sure.
Yeah. Like to compare, the last episode we had Jennifer Runyon, who was probably a bigger get for the show at the time than Terry Hatcher, and people are like, Jennifer Funyon? Like, no, Jennifer, the girl that Bill Murray is doing the tricks with at the beginning of Ghostbusters. That's who it was. But
yeah, it's hard to keep your 80s, 90s timeline in order sometimes, right? Yeah, because I had to mentally be like, oh, Jennifer Runyon. And yeah, my first thought was she's going to go on to the Couple Wavy Lines in a few years. I'm like, nope, that's backwards. She's already done that.
Yes.
And now she's here in Quantum Leap. So.
It was on her demo reel when she auditioned for Quantum Leap. That's where it was.
That's who you are at that point, the Couple Wavy Lines girl, So
definitely. And this one, to start the episode, we have the intro, which is not the typical intro. It is a recap with Sam giving a narration, and I think they thought the catchphrase for this show is going to be "went a little caca." Like, I think they were high on that, and it was going to be "oh boy." They didn't know it yet, but
sure.
And he calls himself the time traveling Lone Ranger with Al as my Tonto, and I don't even need a mask. And the title sequence is kind of humorous to me. Like, I'm sure many people wouldn't notice, but it's very lacking in episodes with which to do a montage with. Like, It's mostly the first episode and like this one and then maybe two others, and they try to make it look like he's going all over in time, but he did a couple things.
Now, another interesting thing is I'm assuming, because the show went heavily into syndication, and like we talked about last episode where, things are altered and things like that. When I did my quick refresher watch of this on the NBC app just last week, they gave it it was still the non-narrated intro, but it featured cutscenes from all different. It had Sam as the boxer, it had things. So obviously it was recut that way, but I was not expecting it because I knew that wasn't what it originally was, and B, I was like, well, I'm seeing a bunch of crap that hasn't happened yet, and for a time travel show, that's not terrible, but that could throw off the average viewer if it was made like that originally, which fortunately it wasn't.
Gotcha. Speaking of the editing with the show, I have a funny personal aside to share, Quantum Leap related. So when I lived out in Los Angeles, I did Blu-ray and DVD testing, and it was like my job out there. And when I was first out there, my first year, I sat next to this guy named Craig, and I got this fancy Samsung phone when I moved out there, and I changed my ringtone to the Quantum Leap theme song. So I'm sitting there, I'm talking to this guy named Craig. We had stations. So it was called wasn't nav, it was compatibility. So you'd have 10 players, one TV, and you had to go through them. They're all like the top marketed players in the world and stuff, and you had to make sure disc would play normally on all these players, and it'd take you forever, and you'd sit by somebody, you just chat all day and do this stuff. And he starts telling me about, he was an editor or whatever, and he gets onto Quantum Leap, and he was an editor on Quantum Leap. He had edited it for one season, and then my phone went off, and I felt like the biggest douchebag in the world. I was like, "Oh my god!" And everybody's like, "Kissing his ass." I'm like, "No, I'm not." That was literally been my ringtone for a long time. But it was really funny. He's like, "Oh yeah, no, I cut that show." I'm like, "Did you get to meet Scott or anybody?" He's like, "No." He's like, "I just sat in a room and cut the show." I was like, "All right." He's like, "I met Donald." Like Pete Belisario, but
yeah,
like, yeah, but that was embarrassing. That's my Quantum Leap fandom right there.
There it is.
Yeah,
in all its glory.
Once worked with editor of show, had ringtone. So
yes. Shared awkward moment with scene creator.
Yes. So back to the episode at hand. He starts with a very Indiana Jones-ish professor, but that's what it kind of made me laugh. I'm like, oh, they're doing the Indiana Jones thing. All the girls love the professor. Then you see him in the mirror, and Sam's even distraught by. He's like, no, oh no.
It was a very I'm usually I'm usually all for having those reveals and kind of not knowing where things are going. Yeah. But to me it felt a little clunky because I was like, well, they like every single girl in his class, his class of all females, every single girl's like swooning over him. I'm like, there has to be like a reason, and the reason was that he was just a creepy horn dog that would give them better grades if he slept with them. I'm like, oh.
Maybe he had some sort of teaching charisma, and they saw something in him that they weren't getting from the boys on the campus.
But the first time that he talked to Donna as the professor, Donna was like, I could get my own grades. Thank you. So
right. That's right. Yeah.
Some of that inherent, and again, this is a product of the times. You're probably not going to see a story arc like this in our current day and age on TV. So
yeah. And with this episode, they clearly establish that with the teacher-student affair and how he is with Jamie Lee, that Sam is not interested in taking advantage or womanizing on his leaps.
Right.
Which is nifty, and it gives it a more family-oriented aspect if people want to do that. But there will be like sexual things on the show, but it's never going to be Sam hound dogging his way through his leaps. And
right, they don't have to. Yeah, they don't have to make it uncomfortable, right? So
right. Yeah, this one pretty much he goes in his own interest while having an obstacle of a woman fawning over him that, no problem, I just won't give her my time. But she also has the boyfriend who, there's many, I like Bakula's chemistry with this guy and his sort of like, some sort of like sympathy for him and trying to educate him and help him. They have some really good moments.
Sure. Yeah, it felt very, I got a very Revenge of the Nerds booger type of, or not booger, the big brute, the nerds guy, yeah. I mean, I felt that kind of classic vibe, but then also, it's nice to see these side characters also get a little bit of a story arc and a little bit of a redemption in, throughout the episode as he does learn and grow and becomes a better significant other to Jamie Lee and things like that. So it's kind of cool to see that.
Yeah. And Jamie Lee looked like, she looked a little older. She looked like when you try to cast like high school with late 20s kind of, but she's in college, so who knows?
Not non-traditional student there. So
non-traditional student, yeah. But yeah, they basically, he goes out of his way to find out about Donna's father who left when he was younger, and Al. He's not supposed to help him. Sam's memory is supposed to come back to him on his own, but Al caves and he wears this sash with hieroglyphics, which Sam is fluent in hieroglyphics, apparently. Which
surprise. Yeah, one of his, because he said he has six doctorates. Sam does, and one of them is apparently is ancient languages. So
ancient language and medicine. We have two now. Yes,
medicine, and then of course quantum physics is the third. Right, so And then we also eliminated psychiatry through an in joke that we knew psychiatry was not one of them because of his poor bedside manner. So
definitely. And I do love when Al, the people in the present figure out what Al's doing and drag him away. It's really kind of creepy and cool.
Yeah,
what they do to him. And Al's presence is just fun. He's always, Stockwell is great, and I don't think he's really knowing these Stockwell. He's a child actor. He's like one of the most like. Didn't have like some like a down and out period in his life child actor, but I knew him from like David Lynch movies, things like that, and this is kind of a more regular role for him to play in a nice guy role, which he doesn't typically will play a lot.
Yeah. And early here in these early episodes, he really carried the anchor to the present / future aspect. This was before we got a lot of, Ziggy, really graduates into its own character as the computer and the, making the crazy noises on the pad. But early in these episodes that hadn't been established yet.
Right,
so
true,
really
true.
it was Dean carrying this whole thing as the anchor to the quote unquote present. So yeah, it was very cool to see Dean Stockwell do his thing like that.
Yeah, definitely. And this episode, now I'm thinking about like I'm just now realizing the limited amount of sets it had, but it felt like it was more because they go to that restaurant a lot. They have his home is one of them. There's a little bit of exteriors, and then the hotel. But it felt like it went all around. But I was like, yeah, a lot of this took place in that damn diner or that restaurant.
This maybe that maybe plays into what we were talking about last episode about the sci-fi on a budget. They're trying to be balling on a budget and do it big, big ideas without big physical manifestations. And I'm sure the network appreciated that.
Yeah. And back then, and it's TV back then where, we don't have CGI, effects cost a lot of money, and you had to rely on your characters and your character scenes. And that's one thing I think lacks in today's, but today is focused on doing your best not to get someone to switch a channel or something.
Yes,
and you gotta
absolutely.
I do miss relaxing, letting characters just be characters for a bit, and mixing with all that cool stuff. But it's kind of nice just to see the strength of an episode really moving based on just character interaction, having plot things happen or whatever. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you could tell that their biggest budget, payout. They're like, okay, we'll spring some money if you want Dr. Beckett to put his hand through Sam a couple times just to prove that he's a hologram,
right?
Or like you said, the being drug away scene and then disappearing behind the door that doesn't exist. They definitely had their moments, but they use it sparingly, which I think was smart on their point. So
yeah, definitely. It's a lot of fun. The Watergate touch here, I didn't realize was coming. I haven't seen this episode in a long time. I remember I was like, oh, this is the Terry Hatcher one. I remember he tries to do stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, there's the Watergate thing at the end, which is funny. Everybody makes their little Watergate jokes. It was probably much more timely and hilarious back then.
Probably, yeah. But then again, like you said, if that show was done today, that would have been the focal point of the whole episode, right? Being in the Watergate and the cultural significance of being present. And here it's almost treated like a throwaway joke almost.
Right? Yeah, definitely. There are things that make little weird jokes like that that touch history, but today it would have been the focus point. We'd have to educate about Watergate and all that, but then it was still fresh on people's minds probably, right. And Nixon was still alive during this too.
That's true.
So definitely interesting, and getting with her mom, and he's got the confidence. I like that in the end, Sam truly cared about her connecting with her father more than he did the possibilities of what it meant for his future, because Al reminds that she left another guy at the altar before him. So
right.
What if she doesn't leave that guy? But
right. And that was one of the biggest anchor points of this episode to, later on, not to jump our own shark here, but later on in the fourth season, there's an episode where they do establish that, Donna did end up, after Sam changed history, Donna did end up marrying Sam, but Sam doesn't realize it because of his, Swiss cheese memory, and, he doesn't know anything. And then Donna won't let Al tell him and things like that. So obviously at that point, I believe Donna was recast as another actress in that fourth season. But yeah, it was very interesting to see that obviously whatever he's doing in the past is altering his present, but obviously it's not altering it to the point where he's affected by it any sort of way.
Yeah, Al never. He seems to be aware of things too. So it's a weird however that works out. Definitely. And then I did like when he had the little black light. Speaking of effects on him, he's like, it must be the black light here. And I will say too, I mentioned it last time a little bit, but I like the restraint of only through Sam. We don't see that. We can see what we can of Al, but I think today, you would have the back and forth between where Al's at, where Sam's at, and it wouldn't be such a mystery. Here, I love being just in Sam's shoes, and it
right. Yes, yeah, and I think they did that again. My assumption is that they did that to help the viewer at the time, really kind of empathize with Sam and, kind of feel his struggle of being truly stuck in a fish out of water, not
Right.
We don't get that anchor point of, oh, well, see, everything's fine back in the normal world when Al logs off and goes home and goes to bed or whatever. You don't have that. You're literally with Sam from start to finish. So you are part of his journey.
Yeah.
Into the unknown.
Yeah. I feel like today there'd be like these 4 characters back at there, and then only Al interacts with, and they have their own dramas going on and challenges, and it's a dual thing rather than just focusing on the. By this point, Gucci would have got a spin-off show where it was all technical sci-fi jargon and all this. Yeah. So 100%. Yeah, definitely.
So this was one of those fun ones that, it's cool to talk about a show like this as we move forward, because everything is very, with the exception of the occasional throwback episode, everything is very self-contained. You can really dive in, talk about one episode, and then like, okay, now we're moving on to the next episode. So no, I think we've covered pretty much everything that this 47-ish minutes of episode had to offer us. So.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I always I miss a lot of the TV. Like, I think, I'm not against how TV is now though, but I think they've gotten away from realizing just the importance of an episode, like making an episode feel start finish, even if it's a link to another piece, having its own arcs, having it, because there's, going through like Netflix shows that they binge and stuff, there are episodes that wind up in like the later 3/4 that are just there, like they don't even, and people don't remember singular episodes anymore. Almost, it feels like.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're right. We go back and forth a lot about this on. Anytime I do any sort of writing on sciencefiction.com about, in particular, Star Trek Discovery, we go back and forth on this because I don't, people who know me know my feelings on Star Trek Discovery. Don't like it, but but that's a show. It's the exact opposite. Like if you were to tune into season 2, episode 7, if you haven't watched the first 6 episodes, probably right before, you're completely in the weeds. You have no clue what's going on, and it feels too interconnected. So it's nice to have these standalone stories you can just enjoy and then go about your business. That's what TV to me feels like is really entertaining in that fashion.
Yeah, just with Star Trek and Discovery, like what I liked about Star Trek is like, oh, where are we going this week? And now it's just like to explore Brave New Worlds. It's now this season is a Brave New World. That's another Brave New. That's a whole nother story. But whenever it comes back, the Orville, that's got. Scratches that Star Trek itch.
Yeah, we have one. We get to enjoy one final season of the Orville. They've already said that this next season is the last, but I do enjoy that. That's fairly serialized, and I know they've said moving forward, some of the newer Star Trek shows, like they had the animated Lower Decks, that was fairly serialized. And then we have another animated Prodigy, and then the Captain Pike led Strange New Worlds is supposedly going to be more of an individual, episode by episode type of feel. So fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. Always optimistic. All right. Well, that'll do it for today. I think we've made right here where other conversations about the episode once went wrong. Tony, tell people where they can leap to find your work.
Sure. You can come check me out always at sciencefiction.com. There's new content posted there all the time. And if you want to connect with me personally, you can do so at tonyschaab.com or find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Tony Schaab across the board.
All right. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD. Written work at whysoblu.com. There's more from the Brandon Peters Show this week, but from Old Space.
Oh, boy.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.